What's up, YouTube? I'm here again with another video where I've had a chance to interview a Pratt and Whitney engineer. Pratt and Whitney is another manufacturer or aerospace manufacturing company located where their headquarters are located in East Hartford, Connecticut. They're primarily known for creating aircraft engines for both the civilian and military industry. Pratt and Whitney as a whole is a subsidiary of Raytheon Technology, and within the aerospace industry, there was considered the big three as far as aerospace manufacturers for aircraft engines, and those three are General Electric, Rolls-Royce, and Pratt and Whitney. So General Electric and Rolls-Royce are the main competitors for Pratt and Whitney, and within those big three, they are responsible for creating the majority of the engines you see used on both civilian and military aircrafts. Within the civilian industry specifically, Pratt and Whitney is responsible for 25% of the aircraft engines used on passenger airplanes that are purchased by the most common airliners you see at airports today. Within the military complex, some of the most famous and iconic airplanes or fighter crafts that you see are currently use Pratt and Whitney powered engines. Just to name a few, the F-35 Lightning II is currently using Pratt and Whitney's 135 engine, and also the famous F-22 Raptor is powered by Pratt and Whitney's 119 engine. Now, before I show you guys the interview, if you guys could hit that subscribe and like button, I would greatly appreciate it. But stay tuned because I got some good content ahead.
What's up, YouTube? I'm here with another exciting opportunity to interview a peer of mine who currently works at Pratt and Whitney, and we'll jump right into it, and I'll allow him to introduce himself. So, Charles, if you can introduce yourself by stating your name, where you're from, and what your official job title is, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you, Shaq, for doing this. And I'm very glad that I was invited to do this with you today. I'm Charles Mayaka. I went to Syracuse University with Shaq here. I'm currently a senior mechanical design engineer. Actually, I just got the promotion last Wednesday, so it's actually an opportune time.
Congratulations.
To be doing this with Shaq. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm officially a senior mechanical design engineer at Pratt and Whitney. And I'm originally from Kenya. Then I went to Syracuse, then Belcan for a short bit. Then I ended up at Pratt and Whitney.
Awesome. And can you tell us a little bit about what Pratt and Whitney does, and specifically in your department, as well as overall?
Absolutely. So Pratt and Whitney is essentially one of Raytheon Technologies' businesses. Raytheon Technologies is actually a pretty well-known defense contractor in the aerospace and defense industry, but we are also one of the very well-known engine manufacturers essentially in the entire world. I think we own a pretty substantive segment of the business, but we produce aircraft engines, both military and commercial.
Awesome. Okay, so getting right into it, it sounds like most people understand who work in the aerospace industry that majority of the military engines come from there, from the F-22 Raptor engines to many other aircraft. F-135. Yep. So it's a pretty cool company to work for, and I want to give people insight to what it's actually like working in the industry, so that people who are currently in academia can have some sort of wisdom, or just we can have someone's testimony from what it's actually like working in the defense industry. So getting right into it, working at Pratt and Whitney, overall, what is it like working there? And in terms of what are your day-to-day duties as an engineer based off of your job title as a senior mechanical design engineer? What are your day-to-day duties, and what does that entail? What does a senior design engineer do?
So I'm getting into that now.
Yeah.
Basically, day to day, it's fun working at Pratt and Whitney. You end up with a very nice collection of fellow employees who are very good at what they do, right? They're very well trained engineers, basically taken from across the country and sometimes across the world. And they collectively come together in these teams that are tasked with producing very, very dependable engines, basically the best engines that we can to power aircraft and keep our military well supplied with whatever they need to complete their missions. And for our passengers like you and I, regular civilians, we get to fly in these beautiful aircraft now, and we basically produce a power plant that powers them. The job of a mechanical design engineer is to basically it's a wide range, I'd say. So it can be, you can be part of a maintenance group, can be part of a team that actually does the actual design. You can be a person who comes up with the specifications on what repairs should be. You can also be the person that does the structural analysis, although that's more of a structural engineer than a mechanical design engineer. But a mechanical design engineer basically is the link between structural requirements, aerodynamic engineering requirements, manufacturability, yeah, and basically general design, thinking basically wholesale how the whole entire component comes together to fit a given functional purpose inside an aircraft engine, and then ensuring that it's actually produced to your specifications, and that it meets all the requirements for which it is designed.
Thanks for sharing that. That was a really good example, especially how you said a design engineer is kind of a bridge between the structural requirements and the aircraft requirements and performance requirements. So since that's true, like what does that entail in terms of engineering skills that you use in academia? Do you use CAD or FEA? What are the typical softwares that you use within your specific position?
Yeah, so at Pratt Whitney we tend to use Siemens NX. I know at college, yeah, NX. So at college I was more of a SolidWorks person.
Yeah.
But when you get into, well, most CAD programs tend to essentially be about the same, right?
They're all the same. Just the buttons are different.
Yeah, the same concept, just a different interface, right? And then you go out and pretty much model whatever it is that you're producing, and sometimes release blueprints that basically define what you've modeled in your CAD program. You also sometimes do some basic FEA analysis, finite element analysis, but that is typically left to structural engineers who you work with in the same teams. So a design engineer basically takes all the requirements, right, from structures, from aero, and then fits them into these particular body or object that fulfills what both teams want and what the system designer basically intended for that particular part to produce. In my case, since I'm a compression system engineer, pressure drop across a particular stage in an aircraft engine.
Okay, so you're analyzing that. Okay, that makes sense. And I like what you said about how you have all these initial conditions that are given to you, and these parameters of what you design around. That being said, would you say that you coming in had a chance to design things from scratch, or were you working on more of a redesign and designing things that are already been designed and making them better and more efficient? Because I think I had the mindset when I was coming in, I was going to be designing things from scratch and doing my own personal take, my own Tony Stark sort of,
Yes, it's true, right? The expectation when you come out of college is, oh, I'm going to be this, absolutely fantastic guy who's going to be designing things from scratch, and but then you get into the industry and you realize, wow, the actual process of designing an aircraft engine takes years, sometimes decades to actually accomplish. So when you get in there, you might end up finding yourself in a given phase of the project. Maybe it's through preliminary design, or it's actually in engine tests, and now you're responding to things you're discovering through the testing. Sometimes it's actually engines that have been in operation for a long time, and you're coming up with new ways in which, new ways in which you can either repair them or responding to the needs of the field, whatever they're seeing out there in the field, right? So you never really, it's rare to actually come into a program and be in it from the concept all the way to actually seeing it out. But some people actually do. I have some colleagues and teachers that I've worked with who've seen an actual project from its inception all the way through to testing and actual production. And these guys tend to have a much better and comprehensive understanding of what that entails, because they've seen every phase of the project all the way through. But the other portions of it are also just as satisfying, right? You get to learn a lot. You get to interact with your colleagues who have specialized knowledge. You get to really work with so many different disciplines that you didn't even imagine ever interfacing with, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes vendors, sometimes, you know, you talk to casting, especially sometimes material people. It's quite fascinating.
Mm. Yeah, that was the one thing because I work as a liaison, so I bridge between all those different departments. And the one thing I had to accept also was that, in college we learn all the different courses: thermodynamics, aerodynamics, FEA, CFD. But when you get into the industry, you're assigned to a specific job with a specific.
Yep.
You don't do everything. There's a whole department for structural analysis. You're not going to be doing that and aerodynamics. It just doesn't happen. So that was
And for
just
good
something.
reason too, right?
Yeah. You don't have time. It's just too much time. You need people that are experts. And so, but anyway, thanks for sharing that. And moving on to the next question, I was like, what do you like most about working there? What's the top thing, that you think stands out to most to you, that you enjoy the most about working there?
So I think the thing that I enjoy the most is the team in which I am. It's actually very well put together. My manager happens to be the same person who actually mentored me through getting into the company itself. He's very knowledgeable, has been in the company for about 10, I think it's 10 or 11 years. He's a very smart guy, and he's always directed me in one of the most comprehensive fashion to understand what it is that I'm actually working on. Actually, the first manager that I worked for, Pratt Whitney, who we both worked for before my current manager became my manager, was also one of the guys who actually seen a project from its inception all the way down to production. And you can imagine he's got very extensive knowledge, and therefore the teams that he tended to put together had these absolutely fantastic, very curious, very supportive of one another. They created a really good culture and environment in which you can grow. There's nothing wrong with being wrong every once in a while. They encourage you to actually try things and fail sometimes and learn from your failures and get better. So that really is the most attractive aspect of it. Having a very good team in which I'm appreciated and really feel that I belong in a very supportive fashion. You hear all these horror stories about aerospace being a man-eat-man society where it's very difficult to gain ground and actually get your footing in comfortably. But in this case, I think I've been lucky enough to find a very supportive and enjoyable team.
Wow, I respect that answer a lot, because that's a great answer. In terms of, I agree with that. Like, in terms of the thing I like the most actually at my job is my actual group, my work culture, and my boss, and the fact that I get along. So, because that's so important. You think you might just want to come in and want to do technical work and just do that alone, but work culture is super important, and it determines a lot of just whether or not you are happy to wake up and come to work every day. So I respect that answer a lot.
Exactly.
And, also, moving into the opposite side of it, there's always pros and cons. So what is it that you think you like the least about working in? Every job has its negatives. So what do you think is it? I don't know, for me, it was documentation. So I wonder what for you, what do you like about the least about working at, in the defense industry or at your job?
So I guess it's not that I don't like it. It's just that I prefer that it would have been better, right? It's the slow process through which things have to move, and you get to learn the reasons as to why, right? You don't want to rush a product into market that hasn't been rigorously tested and qualified, right? Because we're not just driving cars down the road where if something happens, you just pull over.
You can just pull over to the side.
This is an aircraft flying in air, and if something goes wrong, it's coming down like a rock, right? So there's no margin for error. So you have to have very rigorous methods in place, for testing and all that, right? But we also realize there's new processes that are coming in. There's new materials. There's new methods of analyzing things that are making it easier and faster for us to actually progress in how we do these analyses that are going to be reducing the time. But I just wish sometimes things were a little faster. But you don't quite get that, and you get restrained in a way, which is, I don't think it's a bad thing. You get restrained, you get to be made to stop and pause and think about what it is that you're doing and try to comprehensively understand that what you're producing is actually meeting its intent. So there's a good to it.
No, yeah, and I agree with what you said. Like this aerospace, what most people don't understand, like you said, this is much smaller margin of error in our industry. It's everything's got to be right the first time. You know what I mean? And now I
Exactly.
get it. I get it. So moving on, what's the coolest thing you've seen at your job? I know you work, I think at the Connecticut location. So I don't know, do they do the testing
Yes.
facility there? Do you get to see any of the jet engines in action? What's the coolest thing you've seen?
Wow. The coolest thing that I've seen, I think the coolest thing that I've seen is more of the coolest thing that I've experienced, and this is to be part of the test team. Um, I remember going down to Florida sometime in 2019 in the summer and being part of the test team there for one of our engines. It's absolutely fantastic. It's a different experience just seeing your engines modeled in a computer and then produced, and you actually can touch the parts and actually see, wow, this is what my work ended up producing, right? And it's a different thing altogether, actually hearing the entire assembly in action, right? Hearing the
Mhm.
power of the engine itself, hearing the sound. It's quite something. And then knowing very well that one of the parts that you help design is actually in that engine and running. I
Yeah.
think that is the coolest experience I've been part of so far.
That's pretty cool. Do you remember which engine it was by particular? Just curious.
Yeah, I
Or
know what
oh,
engine it was.
oh, you can't say it. Top secret. He's like, oh, I know. Because I like to usually like give something to, but no, that's pretty cool. No, that's awesome because I'm super fascinated with jet engines. That was my favorite course when we took like compressible flow in college and learning about
Yep.
all the different shock waves and all the different compression stages. That was my favorite course by far. So I think Pratt and Whitney is an amazing company. All right. So getting into the next part, I had another set of questions. So I want to talk about getting into Pratt and Whitney, what that process was like, so I can give people insight to perhaps some insight onto how to get into these companies because I know they're really competitive. So what was the application process like? Did you apply online or did a recruiter reach out to you?
So yes, I did apply online, but the easiest way to get into Pratt and Whitney typically is to try and network, right? Initially, I guess let me say this: the easiest way to get into Pratt and Whitney is to apply into the internship programs. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Once you're through the internship program, typically, if you perform well, which we expect our interns to perform well because we're very selective with who we let into the internship programs themselves, you typically get an offer at the end of your internship, right? If it's an intermediate term between I believe it's the summer of your junior year. I believe it's at the end of your junior year in the transition between your junior and senior year. So that summer, if you get an internship at Pratt and Whitney, most of the time, if you perform well, you probably get an offer uh, from the company, and then you can join us immediately following your graduation. Uh, the second way to do that is to be in touch with people who've worked at Pratt and Whitney, right? And this is where if someone is in college and they have an alumni network, it's good to reach out to those people in those alumni networks. We tend to go to the colleges and speak at events there. We tend to be very, very open in giving back to the community through our alma maters most of the time. So if you
Mm-hmm.
get in touch with someone who's from Pratt and Whitney, they can easily express your interest in working with us. They can easily create an internal reference for you to apply for a job uh, internally. For you to apply for a job that's posted that they'd be aware of, right? So that's another
Yeah.
way. The other way, which is a bit more difficult, is obviously just doing a regular application online, but then your
Yeah.
resume really, 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 really has to stand out.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I
Yeah.
mean, you can imagine it's the aerospace industry, right? There's
Yeah.
applicants from across the country, and they have to
That's the
sift
thing.
through that. I don't envy human resources people. I've
Yeah.
gone on recruiting missions with them every once in a while, and it's not easy. They tend to be very selective, but also they have to be very careful not to miss a good candidate. But it takes a really long time because you can imagine there's about 5 to 10 recruiters, and they're talking to almost 300 candidates, right?
Mm.
It's not an easy task to actually do and consistently imagine picking out the best out of all those candidates. I can imagine them being tired. I remember being in one of the recruiting trips, and it was really not a very easy exercise, but it was a very enlightening one. So that's the third route through which you can get into Pratt and Whitney.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I agree. I always try to push people when I give people advice. I was like, go through the internship program for whatever company you want to get to, because it gives the company a chance to invest in you without fully investing. They get a chance to try you out and see how you perform, because it is a lot for a company to just look at your resume, and not have any insight to what it's actually like working with you. So going through the internship route, I've heard many people have success with that at other companies. I know that's how John got his job at
Yeah.
SpaceX. So that's a great answer. And what do you think made you stand out the most from other applicants? Because well, you said you had your internship experience. I spoke to another engineer who said during his internship he came up with a solution to a problem that existed while he was there. Not everybody does
Mhm.
that, because that makes you stand out a lot. But I was just curious, was it just you performed well at your internship experience, and you think that was what made you stand out the most, or was it your
So I
projects you
did
did?
not. So funny thing, I was not a U.S. citizen by the time I was applying to.
Oh wow, yeah, that's another big
Actually,
thing.
no. Let me correct that. I became a U.S. citizen the same year that I was applying at Pratt and Whitney, but then I ended up at Belcan, which was the company that gave me the first job right out of working at Syracuse, right?
Mhm.
But then at Belcan, I did well enough that the person at Pratt and Whitney who was sending what we call the statement of work noticed, and then they essentially sent me a link through which I was able to apply, and then come in for an interview. I only lasted at Belcan, I think it was a month and a half or something. So yeah,
Gotcha.
that's how I
Cool.
ended up at Pratt.
Ah, okay. Now going into, I see a lot of people who talk about reality versus expectations, versus what you expected, versus when you graduated in academia and sort of the vision you had. How does the industry differ from what you expected, while you were in your studies versus now what you experience? So how did the difference now? What's the biggest difference?
So the biggest difference is, I'd say it's the glamour that college sells versus the reality of. So the glamour is, oh, it's going to be an absolutely fantastic, this beautiful aerospace, world in which you're inventing these amazing things and you can see your results really, really quickly. And the reality is, these are really, really dedicated, people working really hard at solving some 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 of the most complex problems in a very, very systematic fashion, very, very rule based, sometimes rigid, but for good reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that quick, or those quick returns that you're expecting, that your career is going to see these and you're going to be responsible for something really major really quickly, it gets kind of, tamped down a bit, right? That you get to get a reality check, which is, yes, you're educated, you're in aerospace, and you've done a good job at getting here. But once you're here, there's other responsibilities that come into the picture that you aren't even thinking about, and the amount of work that you actually learn in college doesn't fully prepare you for what you
Mm,
actually are going to do in the aerospace industry itself. There's other much more specialized things that you get to learn there. There's operations that are in place that given companies have to allow them to get their products out into the market that you actually have to adhere to. That your understanding of aerospace and design isn't exactly enough, right? You get to learn more, right? And this is the
yeah.
beautiful part about it. The reality is you get to learn even more and get even better. You get to gain even more experience, and you just have to be ready to learn more. The college isn't the preparation, right? Isn't the complete and
Mm,
full preparation. You get to actually
yeah.
expand your knowledge, and you've got to be ready for that.
I agree with that. I would say like college, you learn how to learn so that when you get to the job, because every company is different, whatever skills or software or their process, every company has their own process. I didn't even realize that. Sure, there are some industry standards, but for the most part, every company has their own way of doing things that you have to learn and be able to adapt quickly. And like you said, there was so much I didn't realize about soft skills and how to actually do presentations. And it's the soft skills that'll really help you move up quickly if you
Oh yeah,
can learn to navigate different personalities, learn how to, um, uh, be organized and efficient. And because most of the industry, most of the time you're not, actually just sitting there doing hand calculations, or most of it is like you said, it's you're a constant student of life because the industry is always changing, and so I like that answer a lot.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah, and the soft skills too come in place in the other aspects of working at a company like Pratt and Whitney, right? You aren't
hmm,
just expected to be an engineer. I mean, yeah, you can come in and
yeah,
just be an engineer. You come in,
you can.
do your 8 to 5, and then you're out, right?
Hmm.
But there's other elements of it that allow you to be good at building teams, allow you to be good at networking with your fellow employees, allow you to be a better team player, right? And that includes ensuring that, for instance, your company is a place that welcomes everyone. You're engaged in employee resource groups, right? That then people always assume that these are like social clubs in which you get together and you have a good time, but they actually exist to meaningfully contribute to the development of an employee at Pratt and Whitney, right? We have 9 of them, and actually happen to be a president of one of them, the
Oh,
Hispanic
nice,
Leadership Forum. Yeah.
nice.
So my specific one, the HLF or the Hispanic Leadership Forum, is dedicated to the attraction, development, and retention of Latinx employees at our company. And
Mm,
and it's essentially based on the reality that when you look at the demographics of the aerospace industry, there's a major underrepresentation of minorities generally, right?
for sure,
And so
for
we kind
sure.
of have to, yeah, we kind of have to respond to that. The reality is, these populations demographics are changing continuously, and the beauty of it is, from a database approach at looking at the reality of what diversity, equity, and inclusion brings into a company, is that
Mm,
companies perform better. There's data now that
mm-hmm,
shows that,
mm-hmm.
and
Yeah,
so from that we program and try to ensure that we become a much more inclusive company, a much more welcoming company to other populations, while at the same time trying to make companies like ours even better corporate social responsibility partners to the communities where we live and exist. And so
mm,
being engaged in enterprises like that while you're working as an engineer go a long way in making you not just a better employee, but a better person in society, because you're responding to other things that are not just for your personal gain, but for the collective gain.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. We have an institution like that in our company called GABE, where we're outreach to Black engineers and minorities in general. And I started joining it when I came, so I try to do as much as I can to reach out and really start with the youth, and so that other people who are younger than me, but also minorities, can see, like, there's a lot of studies that have been done where if people see that the people of their same ethnicity or skin color are in certain positions of power, that gives them a lot of inspiration and motivation to actually, feel as if they have the confidence to go pursue that industry itself. So I think it's important for all minorities to put themselves out there within their local communities to give people inspiration. So I agree with that. That's awesome. I respect that a
Yep.
lot, man. And so wrapping up, just one or two more questions.
Mhm.
Um, do any of the engineering skills from college you feel like translate into the industry? And if so, what would you tell current college students right now that are studying aerospace to, like, if they had to focus on a few technical skills, what do you think the industry is really kind of looking for right now? I know it seems like every company uses CAD. I mean, it's
Mhm.
just
Yes.
FBA is a huge thing now. You got CFD. But what is it that you see is sort of the future, or and like, hey, like, you need to know how to program, you need to know how to use CAD, and these are the things I would focus on. What would you say are the biggest skills?
So I guess the biggest skill I'd recommend anyone to ensure that they have in the back pocket is for any engineering application field is programming, right? You can pick up
Mm,
whichever one you choose, right? It can be C, uh, programming in C or Python. Python is a much more easily and readily
yeah,
learned and applied one, right? That one, have it in your back pocket. Second
okay.
one is even though most people don't realize it, and I really fault colleges for not doing this, and I'm really disappointed they really don't stress this: geometric dimensioning and tolerancing. You have no
Yes,
idea how important that
GD&T.
is.
Oh
It's like
my god. I didn't even know it existed until I got to the industry. I was like,
Yeah, and
Oh
it
man.
really it makes you understand what you're doing a lot better
Mhm.
when you understand, the parameters within which whatever it is that you're designing actually exists and how it relates to the other parts around it, right?
Mhm.
So those two definitely must acquire skills before you come into the industry. At least as a mechanical design engineer,
Yeah.
it's very very important. The programming part is universal, right? It's not just mechanical
Yeah, that's
design. It's
universal. That'll
everything.
get you a
Yeah.
job almost anywhere. And for those of you who don't know, GD&T is basically it's about there's a whole what do you call it, industry for how to dimension and scheme engineering parts so that because when you build a part, obviously there's the ideal condition of the exact dimension, but when you build a part, you can't machine a part to the exact dimension, so there's variation from the actual part uh, dimensions that are specified on the drawing. So GD&T is all about how to specify dimensions on a blueprint so that parts fit together, and you got to specify the allowable variation from the actual
Yep.
ideal condition. So look into that. If you're in college, look into it. You'll stand out if you have that on your resume, that you know some basic GDT knowledge. So I'm glad you brought that up. And last question
And
is,
college curriculum needs to change to
yes,
include
we need to.
that.
They
I
need to
mean,
include it. For as much as we pay to go to college, they should need to include
that should be
that.
the basic one.
Basic one. So do you have any last question? Do you have any words of wisdom for young aspiring engineers just as you close out? It could just be, I know for me, I always tell them, there's a lot of competition out here. You got to figure out ways to stand out. I always tell people, get out. Don't just get good grades. You have to actually stand out by being a part of extracurricular activities in your college. I was a part of Formula SAE. You could be a part of your rocket club. Find a passion. Find a side project where you can actually apply the skills. That's why I would tell people. But do you have any words of wisdom, or maybe it may be like have a life outside of the industry and have hobbies? What are some words of wisdom you
Words of wisdom. I'm a wise
have?
man now.
Yeah, yo,
um,
yeah. What's some words of wisdom?
um, I guess what I go by is do more, right? Do more
Hmm.
than just what is traditionally expected of you. There needs to be
Mm,
something that differentiates you from your fellow students, right? When someone is
mm,
looking at your resume and looking at your performance and expect and academic, credentials, what they're seeing, if you've gone through the same curricula as your fellow students, you likely have grades that are somewhat similar, maybe slightly higher than them, right? But then grades can only grant you so much, right? There's things that inform us on how you perform in a team environment, how you respond to challenges, how do you respond to failing, right? Which is going to be expected in industry. You're not always going to have successful projects. What happens when you fail, right? How do you respond to people who are different from yourself, right? How accommodating are you of environments that you're not used to? How accommodating are you, or how responsive and adaptable are you to environments that you're not expecting? So these soft skills can only be learned by immersing yourself in things that are different than what your expected, your normal operating uh, procedure is, right?
mm,
So I think what we say at Pratt is be ready to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? And the
mm.
only way you're going to be ready to be comfortable with the uncomfortable is by being uncomfortable. So what have you done? What have you done outside of your normal realm of operation that actually has taught you something new? So try to place yourself in such a
Mm.
situation, and then yeah, you learn quite a lot from that.
I agree. That's great. That's great wisdom right there. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Push yourself outside your comfort zone, and
Absolutely.
and and I agree. Well, thanks for that wisdom. And just closing out, just want to say thank you, Charles, for being willing to allow me to interview you. It's been great learning
Sure.
more about Pratt and Whitney. If any of you guys have any questions, please leave your comments below. Hit that subscribe and like button, and I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you, guys.